They say there is no such thing as a perfect crime, and after 20 years wearing this badge, I can tell you they are right. Criminals think they are smart. They think the night will hide them. They think that if they plan enough, they can get away with murder. But they always forget one thing. The dead body speaks. It tells us everything. You just have to know how to listen. It was a Tuesday, November 14th, a cold night in West Virginia. The station was quiet until the phone rang at 6 a.m. It was a delivery driver. He was panicking. He told dispatch he found a body on the porch of a cabin up in the Blackwood Hills. Now, usually when we get a call like this in that area, it's a heart attack or an accident. But my gut told me this was different. I grabbed my coffee, got in the cruiser, and headed up the mountain. I didn't know it yet, but I was driving towards one of the most confusing cases of my career. When I arrived, the mist was still heavy. I walked up to the porch, and there he was. Elias Thorne, 58 years old. He was lying face down. The first thing I did was secure the perimeter. You don't want anyone messing up the footprints. I looked at the body. No knife wounds, no blunt force trauma, but there was a hole in his chest, a bullet wound. But here is what stopped me in my tracks. I looked around. Where was the shooter? The porch was enclosed by glass. The glass was shattered, but the hole was clean. This meant the bullet came from outside, traveled through the window, and hit him. I looked out toward the woods. It was just trees for miles. Whoever took this shot wasn't standing in the driveway. They were hundreds of yards away, hiding in the darkness like a ghost. I lit a cigarette and stood there thinking. This wasn't a robbery. Elias had his wallet on him. His expensive watch was still on his wrist. A robber doesn't shoot from 300 yards away and leave the money. No, this was an execution. I told my partner, look at the angle. The shooter knew Elias's routine. They knew exactly where he would be standing at that specific moment. This wasn't a stranger. This was someone who watched him. Someone who hated him enough to wait in the freezing cold just to pull that trigger. So the question wasn't how he died. We knew that. The question was, who hated Elias Thorne this much? And that is where the real work began. The first thing we needed was the science. We waited for the ballistics report to come back from the state lab, and when it did, it confirmed my suspicions. The bullet was a .308 Winchester. It's a powerful round, used mostly for hunting big game like bear or elk. In West Virginia, every second household has a rifle that shoots this caliber. This meant the gun didn't narrow down the list, it expanded it. We had to look at motive, and there was one name that kept coming up in every conversation: Bill Miller. Bill was Elias's neighbor. Their properties shared a border, and they had been fighting over a water creek for 10 years. 2 weeks before the murder, Bill had publicly threatened Elias in the town diner. Witnesses heard him say, "If you step on my land again, I'll bury you on it." So, my partner and I paid Bill a visit. When we pulled up to his farm, Bill was outside chopping wood. He didn't look surprised to see us. He looked ready. I didn't arrest him immediately. That's a rookie mistake. Instead, I just leaned against his fence and lit a cigarette. I wanted to see how he reacted to the silence. I asked him, "Bill, where were you last Tuesday night?" He stopped chopping. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "I was home, sleeping." I said, "Can anyone confirm that?" He smiled, a cold, hard smile. "My wife, and my shotgun." We brought Bill down to the station anyway. We put him in the interrogation room, the box. I sat across from him for 4 hours. I pushed him. I showed him the crime scene photos. I told him we found tire tracks that matched his truck. I was bluffing, of course, but I needed to see if he would crack. Bill was angry. He was arrogant. He hated Elias. He admitted that much. He said, "The world is a better place without that old miser." But hate isn't evidence, and murder isn't just about anger. It's about opportunity. By noon the next day, his alibi checked out. His wife swore he was in bed, and a store receipt placed him in another town hours before the shooting. Bill Miller was a jerk, but he wasn't our sniper. We were back to square one, or so we thought, until a deputy found something interesting in Elias's financial records. It turned out the old man wasn't just hoarding cash. He had recently changed his will, and the person he cut out was the one person who should have been crying at his funeral. They say blood is thicker than water, but in my experience, put enough money on the table and blood turns cheap. We dug into the new will. Elias had visited his lawyer just 3 days before he was killed. He explicitly removed his younger brother, Thomas, from everything. No land, no money, nothing. When I read that document, I felt that familiar click in my brain. Thomas lived in the city, 2 hours away. He was a gambler, drowning in debt. He wasn't a hunter. He didn't own a gun, or so he claimed. We brought Thomas in for questioning. He played the grieving brother perfectly. He cried. He asked who could do such a terrible thing. But while he was wiping away fake tears in the interrogation room, my team was tearing his apartment apart with a search warrant. We didn't find the rifle. He was too smart for that. He had probably tossed it in a river somewhere on the drive home. But criminals always forget the small things. Buried in a shoebox full of unpaid bills, underneath his bed, we found it. A crumpled receipt from a pawn shop dated 2 weeks ago. It wasn't for a gun. It was for a high-end optical scope, the kind used by snipers to see targets from 500 yards away. Why would a man who doesn't hunt and doesn't own a gun buy a sniper scope? I walked back into that interrogation room with the receipt in my plastic evidence bag. I didn't say a word. I just slammed it on the table in front of him. The color drained from his face. The crying stopped instantly. The grieving brother was gone, and for the first time, I was looking at the killer. It took 10 minutes of silence, but eventually Thomas broke. He didn't scream, he didn't fight. He just slumped in his chair, looked at the receipt, and whispered, "I just wanted what was mine." He confessed to everything. He had stolen the rifle from a friend's hunting cabin, so it wouldn't be registered to him. He admitted to hiking 3 miles through the woods in the pitch black, carrying that heavy gun, driven purely by greed. He sat in the freezing cold for 6 hours, watching his own brother through the scope, waiting for him to walk past the window. When I asked him if he felt any regret when he pulled the trigger, he looked away. He said, "I didn't see my brother. I just saw a silhouette standing between me and $1 million." The trial was short. The evidence was overwhelming. The jury found Thomas Thorne guilty of first-degree murder. The judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Today, that cabin in the Blackwood Hills is empty. The land that 2 brothers died for, one physically, one spiritually, was sold to the state to pay off debts. In the end, nobody won. Greed is a fire that consumes everything it touches. Elias is gone, and Thomas will die in a concrete cage with nothing but the memory of that gunshot to keep him company. This is Detective Halloway. Case closed. The files never end. There are always more shadows to explore and more secrets buried in the dark. If you have the stomach for the truth, join the investigation. Click the like button and subscribe. This is Detective Halloway, signing off.